And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another nasally review of the hit MGM Plus show, Godfather of Harlem. It's your boy Lucas, my guy Najir, as we are here to bring you the season finale of season 3 of Godfather of Harlem. This episode is called Our Black Shining Prince. So, first, how you doing this evening, sir?
Under the weather. That's the easiest way I can put
Hey,
it.
look. It's not our fault that the Earth decided one day to be in the 70s and the next day to be in 38 degrees. It just happens that way from time to time.
Yeah.
But speaking of things being out of people's control and no one's fault, first up, as we open the episode, we have Bumpy meeting with Wild Bill as he is discussing what Wild Bill did to Elise, and he finally gives him some of the information he has about him about Project Mongoose. So I think I'm gonna start this off by asking you: were you surprised that they met up this way at the beginning of this episode, and we wasn't seeing a vengeful Bumpy to open up?
Yeah, can we let's do this really quick because this is the finale, and I think before we actually get right into this episode, I just want to reflect back into the season really quick, not wait to the end. One, thank you for absolutely pushing that we covered the show. This has been and of course I binge watched everything in preparation for the season, but this season has been fantastic. And you know, with the shows that we cover in this genre, it's not hard, but yet it seems hard for folks to really set themselves aside from the popular ones on the other networks and whatnot. And I just want to say Godfather of Harlem should be in everybody's must-watch list, binge list, or I've seen list. It's really that good. And I think what's also really good about this show is beyond the acting, which there's some, heavy hitters that's in this show. We could talk about the cast at some point, but the production and the music in this episode alone gave us some gems. We got an original song by Snoop, and you ain't tell me here Uncle Snoop. You gotta say something about that. But I mean, I think it might have been 3 or 4 original songs on this last episode alone, and that just speaks a lot to sum up to say I need this soundtrack like this season. Season, man.
For anybody who doesn't know, every week before the episode drops, they drop whatever songs are debuting on that episode on all the DSPs. So any service that you have, they drop them right beforehand. So you can check out every humanly possible song, and you can check out the soundtrack from all 3 seasons, as this is the best soundtrack show on television. One is the only one that has a mega producer who produces original music for every episode that has ever aired on this show. You're never going to see that done again. That's just not only the on-screen talent, but the behind-the-scenes talent of this series, which is just phenomenal. I'm not going to go what I said before because I know how people may feel when I say this is the best show out of this genre, but scratch that. This is possibly the best show on television. It is perfected to a T, but it's also a historical show, so it's a little different than every other show in this genre. This is what we would call prestige television.
Yeah.
Something completely different than what you get out the other stuff. Not that saying the other stuff is not good, but we're just talking about just how excellent this is of a show.
Yeah, and I meant to say, to correct myself, Snoop Dogg original song is in this episode, but over this season, I think we got like 3 to 4 original songs. I know there's a song by Black Jesus that I was messing with. I think so.
No, this season, you actually, the soundtrack is about 15 songs long.
Oh,
so every song that played in every episode of this season is an original song. Okay. They don't use stock songs. They don't do any of that. So everything's original, from the opening, from the first episode when you get the song from Jadakiss, which is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Then you go through the entire season and the progression of these songs. Like, I mean, even your man Fabio's song from 2 episodes ago, which is an absolute crazy set. Yeah. Absolute crazy song. But again, this is what happens when you have someone like Swiss Beats, who saw that this show was coming out and said, I want to be the musical director, and almost compared it to the work, and I know it's blasphemous to even bring up this show, but almost compared it to the work that Timbaland did with Empire, in a sense where I want to do original music every week. But they even separated even further. And Swisher's like, man, I want to do everything. I want to do the soundtrack. I want to do the backing. I want to do everything humanly possible for this show.
Yeah. So thanks for free game there. But either way, you know, still coming to the show kind of new compared to you watching it since day one. I've been thoroughly impressed by the music, the production, the acting, and then the story. And then I think, as you said, like, you know, this is a historical piece and whatnot. We all know what was going to happen in this season.
Yeah.
And even if you had no clue what was going to happen in this season, the first few moments of this episode made it very clear that something is coming, because of this ticking noise that is only telling you that that's time ticking, because that means that, well, your time may be coming very soon. And I think even with all of that, and knowing that, the emotion still rose to the top for me here, knowing what's going to happen, knowing the inevitable, and it still was done so well that it still invoked these feelings for myself, and I'm sure from all the viewers. And last thing I want to say is I know there has been a little bit of a hesitation in the casting switch for season 3 for Malcolm X, and Jason Allen Carvell steps in for this season, which is Malcolm X's final season. And I gotta say, maybe my first episode, I was kind of like, this is a little bit different, you know. But by the second episode, I'm like, he's ready to go. And I think that, you know, if you had any doubts about his talent, and any doubts was he going to be able to carry this character after what's his name did in the first 2 seasons, yes, this episode right here just showed you. And this is not, to be honest, I'm gonna keep it 100. This was not even his strongest episode, if you ask me, but damn sure was the best in bringing that character to life. If you wanted to see the portrayal of this character in a way that you know, that invoked those feelings, and that monumental day in history that just shattered across the world, it almost felt like we were watching this in real time. And I think that's just, you know, a testament to the folks that put the show together, and then the work obviously by Jason here. So I just want to get that out there. And
also,
let's get into
while you shouting out Jason, before we even get into it, I gotta also shout out Grace Porter, who plays Betty Shabazz. This, as you said, this may not be Jason's strongest episode. Is Malcolm. Still a very good, poignant performance from him. This is Grace's strongest episode as Betty. She absolutely kills it in this episode. She evokes every emotion humanly possible from you in this episode. Just from her quiet stillness at the beginning to what we already knew was going to happen at the end. It is something to see. It's amazing that we have a show starring 2, I want to say both of them are Oscar winners. If not, definitely one Oscar winner, one Oscar nominated multiple times. And the first people we highlight are 2 people that are not them for their performances in this series. That should tell you the depth of the actors in this show, that we can pinpoint other actors besides the 2 ones that everyone know about and say, man, these people are performing on the level, if not higher at times, than these other 2 actors in Vincent and Forrest, who are normally give you master classes whenever they're on screen. So that should tell you a lot.
Giancarlo's sitting right there.
Hey, look here.
Michael Raymond James is sitting right there. Like, it's crazy. Listen,
it's ridiculous that this cast is this way, Joe.
If this was the NBA, this trade would have been blocked. There's no way they would have let this team come to assemble.
This was literally Chris Paul going to the Lakers. They're like, nah, we're not doing this, Joe. You're not going to have a supporting cast as strong as this. And then, how is Giancarlo? He's a supporting character in this show. We're literally just coming off of him being a lead character in a Netflix show that a lot of people like. And here he's just another person, another cast member. That's the excellence of this show.
So,
but back to the main question again. What do you think about this first meeting between Bumpy and Wild Bill? And are you surprised you didn't get the ferocious Bumpy that we know him to be at times when he is like off the rails, upset about somebody doing something to him?
Listen, if this had not been the finale, I would have been like, okay, what is happening right now? But because, you know, such a very like questionable moment so early in the episode, you're like, oh yeah, there's something coming with this. But I also think that it works because I think Wild Bill understood that. I mean, Wild Bill knew it with the backing of the CIA. He's untouchable. I mean, we talk about these characters all the time, these CIA folks, right?
Yeah.
And when he touched Bumpy by messing with his daughter, he knew exactly the cause and effect of that, and he knew that if I do so, if I send a signal, it will respond in the way it is. But since the beginning of the show, in every single light, they're gonna keep out here doubting this black man. They're gonna just every single time they get a chance, they're gonna keep underestimating him, and they're gonna just keep thinking they got him every single time. The families thought they had him. Now the CIA think they have him. Everybody think they Jose Battle. Everybody always think they got him. And this is why this show, which really shines the light on Bumpy, is if he's like the Harlem hero here. He's gonna always find a way to win in the true babyface fashion. No matter how many times you beat him down, how many times you hold him back, he's gonna find a way. So coming out like saying like, all right, man, listen, man, you know, I'm sorry, you messed my daughter and whatnot. I was like, what the? Hold on. I was like, let me sit back. Let me reserve every bit of emotion and thoughts, anything. Let me literally let this play out. I can imagine somebody watching that in the beginning saying, "Ain't no way," and tweeting about it very quick. Like, nah, give it a second, real quick. Nah. I know Bumpy got something up his sleeve. So I was like, what's the plan here? That's all I was thinking.
Yeah. Hey, and again, just to bring up you bringing up babyface. This is the perfect, again, you know, big old belt. I'm going to give you a wrestling analogy when I can, because I don't really watch it, but I know enough of it. So this is almost like when they would bring the hero, and my analogy is Stone Cold Steve Austin, when he had to bow to Vince McMahon a little bit, and he would just spit on him and slap him. And then he would turn his head, and then he would look to the crowd and be like, okay, that's enough. And then action would happen. This is almost the exact way that Bumpy handled this situation. He fully understood what Wild Bill would do if he was to go off. And at that point, he needed to formulate the plan, as we saw at the end of last episode, when him and Chin decided to get together to take down these forces. It's like, at times, you got to put your pride aside for the greater good here. And that's what throws you off at the beginning of this episode, because this meek Bumpy is not the Bumpy anyone is accustomed to.
Yeah, and honestly, it was so unusual. I literally forgot that him and Chin had even had a sort of a working agreement at the time. So I was like, wait, what's happening? I was like, okay. Got it. Yep.
And then next up, we get Chin, Jose, and Joe as they talk about the deal with the CIA, but also brings up a very important point of history here, and a point of contention for Jose Battle when he says, what happened at the Bay of Pigs won't happen again. Literally, I love the way they bring up history and they give you a timeline so you fully understand exactly where you're at in history, exactly why Jose Battle feels the way he does. If you don't know what the Bay of Pigs is, please look it up. Please look why he blames John F. Kennedy for what happened at the Bay of Pigs, because he's very clear about that.
Hey, you know what? You bring that up, and I'll throw some more historical context in this too. John F. Kennedy is being blamed for something, folks. I want you to understand that the conclusion of this episode was the start of a spree of assassinations here.
Yep.
Just understand that people in power are being blamed for things. The scapegoats for things. Whatever side you believe in on it, there was a motivated reason for folks to try to contain society outside of these what do they call them, these resurgence essentially that could potentially be in star, or somebody who knows too much is what I always like to say too.
Exactly. But also they bring up the drop with the CIA and the drugs that are coming in. What did you think? Just think about, one, this deal with the CIA, and two, Chin's reaction to it. Like he does it just like Bumpy. He does a great job of throwing everyone off and just says, well, how much is my cut? And they took it as that meaning Chin was all in. What do you think about just the way Chin led them on here, and just the confidence that we see Jose and Joe talk about everything?
Yeah, I was like, what? Again, I was like, hold on now what's happening here? And then I'm like, okay, fine. Well, I'll just move Chin to the side here. Jose and Joe, y'all are just not at all suspicious here. Like, this is the hothead Chin. That whole reputation is being a hothead, and he's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. After everything that just happened, okay. I will say that Joe still very much wants to not only, have a seat at the table with the families, but he also kind of still want to abide by the rules of the family. So I think there's a sense of like, listen, we don't like each other for a lot of reasons, but we still have to functionally work with each other. And I think that's sort of like the proposition that Joe had gave Jose earlier, had gave Bumpy earlier. So I think it's just no different, except now like Chin is governed by family laws or rules, and so he's kind of less suspicious. And then at the end of the day, Jose is just literally desperate here at this point. He doesn't he's like a dog that doesn't have a home, so he's trying to get in where he can fit in without being double crossed, because he's literally playing with fire again. The same advice he gave Bumpy about not knowing what the CIA can do. My man right here, neck deep, have no clue how close he is to drowning.
Hey, making deals about what can happen when we get into Cuba and take it over. Meanwhile, all of us in 2023 still can't travel to Cuba. Like, like it just shows you the time period and just how much he wanted Fidel and wanted Che. Like, he had to have them gone, and he was willing to make any deal sound sweet to get to his end game, which again is a running theme of this season. The running theme for this show is in the end, everyone's out for themselves here. Like, you get mutual friends, mutual partnerships based off of the point that, we got a common enemy. Let's get rid of that enemy, then get back to business. Yeah, that's the way this goes. But also here, the following scene is just the conversation with Chin and Joe, and this is where Chin finds out from Joe that the Empress of Harlem is the one who came up with the drop location. And just the way Chin looked at Joe when he brought that up, because Joe purposely brought it up just so he can try to get even more on Chin's good side. What do you think about this? Is a running theme of this episode, especially with the Empress of Harlem, and about Chin trying to get his daughter back, but also Joe trying to do whatever he can to make peace with Chin.
Yeah, at the same time too, Chin almost completely self-destructed the plan here, because if he had showed any type of anger in this, the little covert operation that they got would have been exposed. I don't know if I believe that Joe was doing this to try to get on Chin's side. I think Joe just completely unaware of like why you should never ever bring up Stella at all at this point. I don't think there's any benefit for you here, sir.
Especially after she picked you over her father.
Yeah. So if you're trying to like bolster him up, like, oh, your daughter's smart, and
I think it was just the point that, if we recall a couple episodes ago, Stella said, "I learned all of this from my father." So that's my thinking was like, maybe Joe's like, well, you told her this. I didn't teach her any of this. Like, look what Stella can do.
It's not a good tactic. I mean, if that's his mindset, then so be it. But it's not a good tactic. Like, hey, man, I know we got a problem with your daughter and whatnot, but she's done all of this planning in dedication to you. So thank you. Thank you, Chin. It's all you that all of this is happening here. Like, what's this going to get you? I have no clue what Joe was getting at, but I think this does show Joe sometimes lack of awareness in certain spaces and rooms. And I think that's what Stella actually is good about, like seeing things from different perspectives. And I think that has a lot to do with how she is in a household with Olympia and then with Chin to kind of have to see out the box on things. But I think Joe still continuously trying to prove that he can have a seat at the table, trying to get on Chin's side for whatever reason. Thought about like, hey, if I solicit this information, this can make us cool. Absolutely not.
Exactly.
You know what's funny though? I can't think of a good analogy, but there are people like that just say things like, folks that overshare, or things who just go about conversations that literally has no context into whatever's going on just for the sake of like trying to get on somebody's good side. You're like, I didn't need to know that.
Get-wits is what we used to call them back in the day. And tell you everything humanly possible.
Listen, I don't think it's far-fetched to say that Joe Colombo is trying to be a get-wit in a seat in a room full of
Yeah.
bosses. He's done more trying to prove that he belongs instead of just standing on his own 2 feet and just doing what he do. Every single thing he's just kind of like, I'm gonna do this because I'm gonna show them, or I'm gonna show Chin that I can handle this. I'm gonna go back to the families and let them know I could do this. Even to Bumpy at times, like I can take the connect, like I can do this. I don't need you to be able to distribute anything for you. I can do this. I think that maybe is a lot towards his characters, just to continuously having to prove, and it makes sense because he's been on the outside. Although when you think about what he's done, he deserves a seat at the table to some extent, you know.
But when you're focused on proving yourself, it automatically puts self-doubt on the work you've already done.
Yeah.
Because you always question, have I done enough? Have I done enough? But I want to quickly stay on Stella St. Patrick before we go into the next thing that happens between Bumpy and Elise.
Stella Baxter.
And the next is her talking to Joe. And this is a very intimate conversation between them two about her still being concerned for his safety and concerned for what her father is going to do to Joe. And she, at this point, tells him maybe they need to stop dealing with each other out of the fear of what the repercussions could be. What did you think about, again, we understand that everyone Stella messes with.
Hey, hold on.
It's an ongoing thing here.
Let me cut you off real quick. What do you think is happening right now with her?
It's very simple here. Stella has this built-in fear of Chin, and she fully understands what he can do. I mean, he's killed Teddy, Ernie, like he's killed enough of the people that she loved, and she understands he wants Joe dead. But she also understands it's her fault, kind of like Franklin. It's her fault that Chin wants her dead. Like
she honestly
understand that.
Honestly, and I don't even agree. I don't even think she has any level of accountability here. I think hear me out. Mm-hmm. She does something wrong, and all of a sudden she's been very much on I'm going to fix this type of thing when it comes to Joe. But I don't think she still very much consciously is aware of what she actually did and why it's wrong. I think the effects of the cause and the repercussions of her actions is so vivid in her face. She's like, oh, I must have did something wrong. But it's kind of like, well, what did you do wrong? One, using your statue as privilege to your own for whatever your own personal benefit is at the demise of everybody around you. Have you sorted out that you've been so motivated of seeking whatever you want that you would literally crush anybody in your path? See, it's very similar, as you said, at times, almost like Bumpy in the terms of like when you have a goal, you don't care who falls by the wayside of it. This is why we nicknamed her the Empress of Harlem here, because she might be the most dangerous person on the show because she's so unaware of her actions. She just do all these things and then she's just kind of like, oh, whoops. Okay, I'll fix it. That's not how that works. That's the utmost of privilege.
See, to me, why I said that she's trying to protect Joe. She's ignorant to the situation, but understands it's her fault. It's a tricky thing to be into, because when a person is ignorant to a situation but understands they did something wrong, they'll never acknowledge what they did wrong, because in the end, they don't know what they did wrong. They just know they did something that caused this to happen. And that's her fear, is that she's done something to cause Chin to want to kill Joe. Yeah. We know, the audience clearly knows what she did. Chin want to kill Joe. She's completely ignorant to it, though. Yeah. And that's the part of no accountability, because she's so ignorant to the fact.
And then to say all of that, to talk about the actual events of what's happening, then you're like, oh, I'm just going to take this plane ticket and get out of here. I think we need to stop messing with each other because my dad's going to come after you. This right here, I don't even know how to say this without even going way off on the tangent about something. But what she's doing right now is the top tier, utmost, most manipulative thing that she's done this entire time. You're dealing with a dangerous man as Joe. You sort of say, invoke this relationship with him, because we know that's how you roll. So we can't blame Joe here, because that's what you do. And yeah, Joe plays a part. Joe probably didn't want her, but this is a very constant pattern of what you do. And you get them in, you get a bullseye right on his
Yep.
forehead, in the
Mm-hmm.
front and in the back, and a potential stab location, a
Yeah.
target on his household. I mean, you put this man in the utmost danger, and let's just call it what it is. I know that there's this fear of Chin, but Chin made it very clear last episode, folks, that he has the biggest family. That means Chin and
Yeah.
the boys, and any of the boys.
Yeah.
And matter of
There
fact,
you
the
go.
families too. The families. Don't forget they don't like you
Yeah.
either because you Stella, you remember you boasted Joe with all this confidence to go back and do what you have to do
Mm-hmm.
to try to insert yourself in a position at the table just to leave him stranded by himself. And then you're like, oh, I got my ticket, I'm gone. What?
It paints a picture, and I'm gonna say paints a picture because I don't want people to say I think this and then hold it against me. It paints a picture that women don't take accountability for their actions, and instead of handling the situation, they prefer to leave it if they have the easy out. She has the easy out because she has the ticket. She could always just leave. And to her, that's the easy way to handle it. Like, well, I think we need to break this off and then I'll just leave. It literally solves nothing.
Yeah.
It actually puts Joe in more danger if you leave. Because Chin is gonna blame him for you leaving.
Also,
like, it doesn't help him at all.
Also, too, you remove whatever bit of intel that you could give Joe in terms of what Chin tactics may be. As we go back to last episode, the biggest question is, well, we know he's after me, but how? She said, I don't know, but I'll find out. Hey, one more attempt. I'll try one more time, but after that, I gotta leave town. Huh? Excuse me?
Oh man. Stella out this joint like Troy Ave. Man, she will throw you under the bus in a heartbeat. You need to be careful out with dealing with the Empress of Harlem here. But as I said, I want to just handle that part with Stella before going back to a very serious and emotional conversation here. And I love it because neither one of them showed emotion during this conversation between Bumpy and Elise. As when she comes in, you can see just the fear that she will relapse over Bumpy's face here. As he asks her, she's fine. She lets her know that she's still going to help Malcolm. But he said, let me put some men on you. And she said, well, are you scared of me using again or something happening to me? And he says, a little of both. What do you think about, especially from what we remember in season 1 of their relationship, of how Bumpy would catch her or get her strung out and have to try to fix that, to here? And we see the pride that he has to the point that she even got clean and that she got herself on track. And now the fear that what Wild Bill did can make her relapse.
Yeah. I think this is a full circle moment. As you point back to season 1. So it's storytelling. So I thought it was good. It seems like a very small of a tidbit thing, but it's the growth in terms of Bumpy and his care, yet responsibility for his daughter and his actions as well too. Accountability here. So full circle storytelling here. That's what I thought. I'm trying to think too. Maybe I'm jumping a moment here, but I just say it just because I might forget. But I told you that Wild Bill in that portion probably could have killed her. And Bumpy very much raised that point of it probably could have killed her. And he said, I was just trying to give a little signal. But I think, coming off, but getting back on, but also the quality of what he had was dangerous. So, I mean, yeah, that was in the first, the meeting and whatnot.
The first scene,
Right. And I think like that's also in the little small containment of the storytelling here is why you see him in a way of saying, like, I literally could have lost her because of my actions right here in my face. I cannot let this happen again. Something that quick, something that slight can always happen.
Yeah. Down to Bumpy kind of blaming himself and at least saying you're always in these type of situations.
Like, I love her sarcastically saying that
because it didn't come across as her like blaming him,
spiteful, not at all.
It came
what it was.
It's just her telling him the truth, which that has been Elise's job since she got clean with Bumpy. She always tells him the truth about everything. She doesn't feel like other people the need to hide things from Bumpy for his feelings, because she's not scared of what his reaction would be to her. by her telling him the truth. And I love the way she said it because it was so matter-of-factly and so quick that he didn't know how to respond to it. But next up, we get a quick short scene. It's not much to talk to, just about Betty and Malcolm as Malcolm's sister buys them a ticket to Japan. And Betty Bay said, "No one's looking for you here." And Malcolm poignantly says, it would take my sister to buy a ticket to a communist country for us to get away," which is weird because, again, we understand Malcolm's views are of the Communist Party. So she clearly thought, if I send you somewhere where they think like you will be perfectly safe. What do you think about this, just this scene and just Grace's performance in this scene as Betty?
Yeah, this is something out of a memoir or something that the folks and the writers who put together this series and put together this episode wanted to make sure they included. I know nothing about this, but you can tell there's a vast importance of this scene to try to tap into something historically in terms of the decision making or a conversation that would happen that was very special. We can easily say, like, you know, these were the moments. I mean, if you're going to interview the family or you're trying to get information, that's literally one of the first things you want to ask is, tell me the moments within the day. That's why this episode is time marked in the way it is. That's why you're getting these moments of like, interesting. He was going to do this, or the planning was the family was planning it. This is the conversation that we had and whatnot. So it's cool. This is why this show is unique in the way it is, because you get something like this and you automatically think, oh, I need to research to see if this scene need to happen.
Yeah,
and I haven't researched it, nor did I know if it's true or not. But you can tell by the sense of importance of adding this that this was definitely a conversation they said, like in a memoir or biography or some bit
maybe in
of
Betty's
interview
biography, when she does have a very great biography out, so maybe this is part of it, of her saying like, hey, even this day before he passed away, we were planning a trip to Japan.
Yeah, tell
and
us
maybe
about
they
that.
say, well, yeah, let's put it in because this is a poignant moment. This is an important thing to see that other people, as she puts it, like his sister loves you and is in fear for you just as much as I am.
Yep.
So this is acknowledging, like, his family even fully understood, like, the dangers that you were in at this point in time. But next up, we get the return of Agent Morgenthau, because we have not seen him, I want to say, for 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah.
We have not seen him. And here he's questioning the DOJ of why they're not going after Joe Colombo, as he is the head of the families. And they clearly bring out,
as
their
he got
instructions
intel
are clear.
As he has intel that he is the head of the family.
Head of the family, yeah.
This right, again, another very important historical tidbit in terms of the fate of what happens with Joe and the focus of Joe. Joe was never the head of the families, but you would think by the moves that he's done, and as he mentioned 2 episodes ago, the historical amount of profit that he brought in, that's enough for them to say, oh, he's the top guy. We don't care what type of hierarchy y'all got.
Yeah,
whoever has the most money, whoever's causing the most mischief, that's what we pinning. That's how it always is. You know? That's why Tariq is, they're after Tariq, because he's no, that's not right after Tariq. Because why would you go after Tariq? I'm still mad about that.
Damn it.
But understand, this is why we were complaining about that. You go after the top person that makes more sense, the head of the top. You don't go out there, oh, that's the little kid that's in college. What? You know, this would be as good as them going, get Elise. It's her. It is Elise.
Oh, no. Make it worse. Get Dale. He's clearly the head of the organization here. It would make no sense.
Never trusted him. They got pictures of him meeting with Jose. Just go, oh yeah, he's with Jose.
Wild Bill. They got pictures of Dale meeting with everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely that Dale dude.
But here the DOJ makes it clear, like, their directives is worry about Malcolm X, worry about people in the Black community bringing in drugs. Like, here it shows this point in history, just the point that they saw the Negro as the biggest threat in the world, and we're willing just to bypass anything that happens with the Italian mafia. What do you think about this scene? And then going into this scene afterwards, when Bumpy just interrupts their meeting and brings up information that he has that could possibly help them. What do you think about this overall meeting, just from the beginning, from Morgenthau and the DOJ to Bumpy interfering in their meeting to give them more information.
Yeah, I mean, we always get the vantage points of, of Bumpy, the family's Chin, everybody, but it was good to see where the authorities, what their talk was, where were their
Yes.
mindset. Morgenthau comes in and brings that perspective of what should be the obvious. We need to be going after the person who is moving the most narcotics that is completely causing mischief in all of New York, Harlem, whatever it may be. It's absolutely Joe, not this. Wait, Malcolm X? Wait a minute. I thought freedom of speech was okay. That was
he said it. Yep.
I mean, I've never said that. I've never thought that. But goddamn it, that wasn't the truth when he said that. Thinking like, oh, y'all mad because he's talking. I have never, ever in scope thought of it that way. Like, oh, y'all mad because he's talking. And it's funny.
Period with black leaders, that's all they cared about. Malcolm, Martin, Fred, anybody who was Rosa didn't even talk. She sat and they were mad. Anything you do, Mecca, like anything you do, that's what they were upset about.
Yeah. Whew, man. Thinking about the moments in history that this repeats this cycle is kind of gives you chills. But yeah, he comes in and he brings that perspective that lets you know, like, I'm confused why all these resources and activities rooted towards him and whatever. So Bumpy coming in here, and I'm just like, okay, what's happening here? And obviously, Bumpy very much showing face that he's definitely up to something, but he solicited his information to them that is very vital. Now, the other interesting aspect, I was like, oh, Bumpy snitching? Oh, this is breaking street code. And then I got a piece of humble pie, and I was like, you're right. And I'm gonna keep it 100. I'm gonna keep it 100
later in the next scene, but we could jump right to the go ahead, because you said already. Go ahead and jump right into the next scene involving Bumpy and Morgenthau, because he clearly pinpoints he ain't snitching.
Yeah,
on people he know.
I got to keep it 100. When I ain't no street dude, but again, around folks and whatnot. So, when they always talk about snitching, I always was confused about what snitching actually was, because I'm like, well, if it's your homies, obviously you don't snitch on them, because obviously, number one, the first reason before anybody even applying the logic of street code is like, if I snitch on my homie, that's still very detrimental to myself, because at some point, if there's any reason why I need to be even questioned, I probably got something to be involved with it anyway. So if I'm snitching on them, that shit's definitely coming right back on me. It just makes perfect logic to just not say nothing. Got it, street code. But then I was like, so if somebody shoots at me, I'm not supposed to say anything, because, okay, I'm a little confused about that. So anyway, regardless of your thoughts about that, my thoughts is I loved how Bumpy very much made it very clear what's considered snitching and what's not. And I think that, like, again, the interpretations of it and whatever your situations and predicaments is by your case only. But I thought that Bumpy coming in and explaining by his situation, it ain't snitching if that shit ain't got shit to do with me.
And it's the government. He clearly says it's the government. I'm not snitching.
Yeah, it ain't my homie. So this and all that, and let's get to work. And I just thought that was just cool to come about that, because I think, again, when you think about somebody, let's just call it what it is. Bumpy being a street legend, a legend of Harlem, the Godfather of Harlem, as they call him. If this had not been displayed, this would have been an asterisk next to his name the entire time. Think about, oh, he snitched Fed. And they will run that to the end of the world. They're like, oh, he snitched to the feds. What does that mean? I'm confused.
Yeah, it will be people that don't know no better. He snitched to the feds about the feds. Here's the weird part. For anybody who would think that, just give this analogy that I know people hate, and I use it all the time when I hear folks talk about snitching. In the streets, they tell you don't snitch. But if a cop beats a kid to death, the street dude will be the first one to say, it's that cop that did it. Ain't you snitching? You find it perfectly fine to snitch on the cops.
Absolutely.
But actually, the no snitching policy pertains to your friends, family, folks in your hood, folks even outside your hood that may do some dirt. You don't want to snitch and give the cops or any law enforcement a leeway to find a solution to a problem.
Yeah.
But if they cause the problem, you have absolutely no problem snitching on them.
Yeah.
And that's the perception here that's the point that Bumpy makes here is it's not snitching because technically I'm snitching on the dirty government to the government. Like, I'm gonna let y'all work this out, but I'm letting you know this is what he did. And here's when Bumpy tells Morgenthau everything about Wild Bill, about him selling drugs in the street to fund the war on Cuba. And then him telling him more about Operation Mongoose. Like, Bumpy tells everything to Morgenthau here.
Yeah.
And makes a deal with Morgenthau. We don't necessarily hear the full workings of the deal, but we fully understand here that Bumpy makes a deal with Morgenthau. What do you think about Morgenthau believing everything Bumpy is saying? Because that's the key part here.
He has enough intel to already know that there's some ground to. That's how Morgenthau works this entire series. He already knows a little bit. You just have to confirm it for him, and then that's a wrap. He's been red hot about every suspicion that he's had. Again, coming in, him saying that Joe is the head of the families isn't technically true, but on the outside, why isn't it? I tell you what, Joe also feels he's the head of the family.
He sure enough does.
He does. So,
he makes the deals. He's bringing in the money. Like, why am I not the head of the families here?
So like he's just never far-fetched about his thoughts about things. He just needs a little bit of extra to confirm his suspicion, and then it's time to get to work. And that's just what he does. And and I think that, you bring up another interesting part. Again, we talk so much about street code and whatnot and snitching, but also think like, people need to equip this knowledge of like, listen, you have to, and I'm not talking in the term snitching, but when it comes between you and authorities, you need to equip yourself with whatever tools that you got, because at the end of the day, we done seen a lot of good people. It's a situation right now in our area. Matter of fact, I talked to you after this too, because I was just thinking about something a day after we left the movies in Tyson's, and I don't know if you heard about that situation, but there's a situation right now in the area where, if you don't know how to handle yourself, or you don't know how to protect yourself in these things, they will absolutely make it seem like you always are the problem. And you folks, I mean you as in us folks, as in us black folks. So learn something and stop living by these dumbass codes that ain't going to get you nowhere.
Hey, that's all I'm gonna say is, as someone who may have dabbled in a certain life at one point in time, or maybe have grew up in certain things and things of that nature, I've never understood the don't snitch policy. It's the dumbest shit in the world.
Definitely.
I'm not gonna let you shoot up my hood and then not say anything. If I can't get to you, nigga, somebody need to get to you. You are a menace to society. Like, you need to not be on anyone's streets. But the scene that we skipped here, and I will admit first, that I am still confused here. I understand this is a Powell meeting about the education bill and about the deal-making process on the floor of the Senate. Is this him meeting with the president or the chief of staff? I couldn't tell, and I couldn't remember.
Let me think. I didn't even consider who he was talking to. I think it was just setting a point in time of what was a focus at
of
whatever
the education bill and everything else that was going on at that point in time. I just couldn't remember who he was meeting with, and I think only reason I was thinking about it is because one, they do it multiple times, and this is about pushing the education bill forward to push other bills forward. And that he couldn't get the money necessarily for Harlem and for his districts without helping push his other agendas forward. I just couldn't remember who he was meeting with. And I am not sure if that was supposed to be president, the chief of staff, but I do remember the original conversation, but I just couldn't remember who the person was. But irregardless, here's just again Giancarlo Stanton playing a supporting role and us questioning who he's talking to.
Giancarlo Esposito.
I said Giancarlo Stanton. Damn it, the New York Yankees. First thing that popped in my head was the New York Yankees.
Please don't get nobody wrong. We won't hear the end of it.
Oh God! Look here. How many Giancarlos do you know? Only know 2. Okay, and unfortunately for me, I just watch a lot of baseball, so Stanton is clearly in my head more than anybody else. But I knew that the scene was important, and I understood the bill that he was talking about pushing through is extremely important here, and just showing the willing and dealing that's necessary to get the things that Harlem needs, but also it shows us that power is not around Harlem at this time while other people are making power moves in Harlem.
Yeah.
That's the point that I wanted to, in all honesty, find out why was he talking to this guy, because they highlighted way too much for us to just to be in the dark about it. I just couldn't remember who he was talking to.
And not forget that Mamie has continuously always tried to invoke her power card, but he's not around, and it's like,
Yeah,
well, why isn't he around? Because he is doing some things. So
exactly. Next up, we get. I want to say, for anyone who questioned the timeline, question exactly the events of this episode. With this meeting between Pettigrew, Dale, and Omar, and they're talking about the ballroom. This should have highlighted or cleared the air for anybody exactly what was about to happen this episode, because we understand the ballroom this is where Malcolm is murdered at. But here, where they just talk about security, they even talk about how to set up security so they can easily access people. What do you think about the thinking of security here, of saying it's better to clear the aisle so we have a clear path to the stage? Not understanding by actually doing that, it actually gave the shooters a clear path of the stage. What do you think about? We understand the conspiracies behind the death of Malcolm X, but now do you understand, or what are your thoughts that technically the people who set it up would have also had to be security minded or law enforcement minded?
okay, dog. Why you even ask me a question? You just literally. Honestly, I didn't understand that. I thought this was just. This was just just the idea that we need to see visually that they were trying to organize security, but I didn't understand. Like, yeah, when I hear, I'm like, yeah, sounds like a good idea. You hear, you're like, no, that's not a good idea.
No,
See, professionals know professional things,
Yeah.
So out of my element,
that's the first. Okay.
Yeah. But good to have you
that's
here.
Just the first thing I thought. I'm about to say that's the first thing I thought. The moment he said clear the aisles so we can rush to the stage sooner, the first thing I thought in my head was, but if you do that, anybody who's trying to kill him can literally rush to the stage sooner. It's a plan that a novice would think would make sense, but anyone else would be like, oh God, no. Like, we can't do that under any circumstances unless we're going to have armed people directly right there by the front of the stage. We can't have that happen. So it just made me think about just the initial setup. I love this scene because it helps explain everything that happened, but also give people the perspective that the people who actually did it would have had to think the same exact thing.
Okay. So we do know recently. I mean, listen, let's just call it what it is. We know recently in the news, as of either late last year, early this year, that the folks
last year
who had been charged, and it was three people. So let's just talk about this before we get to the closing scene here. The three people who were charged for it, two of them has been exonerated and has been provide. One had died recently in jail, but the other one is alive after serving all this time in jail, and it's getting like 30. I think they're getting, I don't know, they're getting a lot of millions of dollars because of this. However, of the three, there is one that still says like, nah, I did that and ain't getting anything or whatnot.
Well, that's the one they poignantly show Omar hit somebody with a chair and they fall. Yes. So one of them was one of the actual shooters.
Absolutely.
The other one were blamed for something that they had nothing to do with.
Yeah. And the two folks that did it were Muslim and Black, obviously. There were attendees there. But they weren't attendees there. They said they were never there. They had alibis. I was never there. But makes sense to blame them because either one, you try to say all of us look alike, or two, you just had to just pin it on somebody.
Yeah.
Folks, regardless of what happened in this episode, I need you to think back for 9 episodes who was also very much trying to put the pause on Malcolm X.
Yes.
And then you're like, well, how could they did it? Because there's nobody that is white or any. Oh, wait, don't forget who just Yeah, y'all remember what just happened to Elise, right?
I,
Okay, cool. So Elise gets got by two black people working for the government
I
and
think
whatnot.
it goes into the theory that most people think that for some odd reason people think that black people can't be bought.
Yeah, not at all.
It makes
Um,
literally no sense.
don't forget
But
about outside of the UN, they had that riot where they said there was a bunch of people that they staged to protest. Not the riot, the
yep.
protest. They hired people for the
Uh-huh.
protest. It's not without
Who do
the
you think they was
realm of
hiring?
possibilities here for these things to happen. Unless again, the three folks that they said, two of them have just got paid a lot of money because it wasn't them that did it. You all should be able to put the connect the
I
dots
mean,
here.
you could even connect it even more. I mean, someone's in jail for killing JFK, but does anyone think they did it? Nope.
Yeah, and
She need to find
honestly,
you.
the biggest thing is, while there has to be with the let's just go with Wild Bill here. Well, Wild Bill and them want what they want to do, understanding that like there's always a measure of doing the job, but there's also a measure of cleaning up the job. And cleaning up the
There
job is
you go.
the biggest thing is to seize and suppress society for the outrage or whatever bit of effect for what they cause. The easiest way to shut people up is by having somebody to blame.
Yes.
If you don't, then what?
Somebody to blame that's in your own race.
Easily.
Because I can't. The goal is to kill you, but not make you a martyr. I can't make you a martyr because if I make you a martyr, your message spreads faster.
Didn't somebody
So I
say
need to
that in this
kill you.
episode?
They actually did say that in this episode. They bring up the point that the message doesn't die with him.
That's it. Yep.
They bring up the message that wouldn't die with him. But a great way to suppress that as much as possible is having people look like him, be the people who take him out. It's a sick way, but again, that's just the way things happen. Next up is Jose and Wild Bill. They talk about the threat that Bumpy can be. What do you think? Just think about in this conversation, both of them fully understand we still can't trust Bumpy. Like, Bumpy seemed way too calm there. I can't trust that at all about Bumpy.
Yeah, and again, I think Jose gets it, but Wild Bill's kind of like, nah, we run this, but also like kind of like, huh, maybe, but nothing out of the norm here. Nothing out of the norm. Didn't see nothing to like actually care about. Just two of them just understanding like, I think we don't need to be so naive, and it's still acting completely naive.
Yeah, exactly. And next up is where we get, as we brought up earlier, the power play on Mamie, as she's replaced and removed out of her position. And the person who would normally protect her, clearly we already see where he's at and the importance of his job and duties at this time. What do you think just that this move was made on Mamie here?
Go ahead.
I want to say, and how it was done to make sure that power wasn't present when it happened.
Well, that's it. That's exactly it. But I think there's another question here. Who is this person? I meant to look this up. Oh, yeah. So Cyril deGrasse Tyson, right? This is a name that I said. Let me look up real quick.
You say Cyril deGrasse Tyson?
Wasn't this who this was right here?
Is he related to the guy who the scientist?
This is what I'm looking at here. Guess what? His son name is Neil deGrasse Tyson. Okay, cool. I had no clue this was the connection. I saw it, and this made me think about
it. His dad was a punk.
Yeah, wow. After getting out the army, Brooklyn. Yep. So a little bit of, I did not know. Dies at 89 in 2016. Yeah. So, but yeah, you brought up you answered your own question here. But I was wondering, like, who is this? And sure enough, so cool.
Yeah, it was a power play that threw me off a little bit. I was like, oh, this is a very interesting time to make this happen. But they clearly knew that if power was around, power would block it. So we got to destroy Mamie from power as much as humanly possible. Yeah. Not much to talk about because we've already dwelled on the Empress of Harlem, and this is where she basically wants to leave and go to Paris out of fear for her father, out of fear what her father may do. We kind of already know about this. This is Stella. I mean, Is there anything else in this episode that you think of relevance to talk about Stella? Relevance. I said relevance, not relevance.
No,
Relevant. Talk about
no,
Stella.
no. She starts all this mischief and she ducks town. Perfect in stellar perfect fashion. Just
But
for her
it
to come
led
back.
to Chin begging her to stay. Like after she walks in on him and Louis, and he fully understands at this point exactly. We see that it kind of worked a little bit with Joe told Chen that Stella did come up with these moves, and him saying, "I want you to be in my organization, and I will tell you everything."
Yeah. She'll come back.
Like,
season 4. Yeah.
is it a point? Do you think she would ever leave? That's my thing. I don't think she would ever leave.
She doesn't do anything that makes sense. So this definitely is on par for her actions here. That's why I'm not surprised. I don't know what to say here besides this makes perfect sense. I would have never predicted this.
Oh.
But the fact that this happens, like, oh, well, of course, of course she would.
Like, of course, this makes sense for stuff. And I know folks thinking, no, it didn't happen. The scene of her going to Paris and this scene didn't happen together. But in all honesty, I'm trying to get Stella out the way here. And I know her next scene is her conversation between her father, her uncle, and her. And Chin letting her know Olympia is gone. Like, she's not going to be an issue anymore. And him doing whatever he can to get his daughter to stay, because that's been Chin's main point, is Stella's protection and wanting Stella around.
Yeah.
But we see what Stella's main purpose is, and that is to deflect and irritate. That's what Stella does.
Yeah.
All right, but next up, right after Stella and she does everything, we get the big meetup between Chin and Bumpy as they're laying the foundation of their plan, and we get them getting ambushed by Wild Bill, who comes up with a completely different plan. It seems like to completely screw over every other Italian, which leads to Bumpy and Chin killing Wild Bill. What did you think about this scene, especially after Bumpy made what we thought was a deal with Morgenthau to turn over Wild Bill? That this ended up being the solution to him and Chin. Instead of taking what sounded like a very sweet deal, they decided we'll just kill you instead.
Yeah, I mean, it's the savageness in them. But I was definitely trying to sit here and think. I didn't have enough time to think because they had already made the decision. But I was like, wait, which one of these deals is actually the best deal? Because Wild Bill deal didn't seem too bad here.
Hey, not at all. His deal sounded amazing. The problem was, I thought, or the problem I'm assuming both of them think is, you've made multiple deals with multiple people. You can't be trusted at this point.
Yeah.
Like, why would I think that the deal with me would be the end all be all? Like, nah, you could just be setting me up. Like, it seems like you're setting them up with another offer.
Yeah.
Because again, in the end, Wild Bill's whole thing was still just to sell the drugs. That's it. He didn't care who needed to do it.
Yeah. I thought that was so like kind of belittling to them too. Like, oh, y'all gonna sell drugs, and it's like I think they are like a little bit past that. Like, they know they can do that, but like, give them a proposition that gives them either more power or security here. But like, you're gonna sell drugs. Okay, we do that. We already do that shit. Yeah, like what you talking about here, bro? Like, so, yeah, it was interesting, I guess.
Yeah,
just to try to figure out what was the best deal.
Scenes are highly important scenes to Bumpy. First up is Bumpy and Mamie, as Mamie tells Bumpy that she's been fired. And then she goes on to tell him that technically she needs to accept everything about Bumpy because she did it to her own in her own volition. That she's with him, so any backlash she gets, she has to accept. The important part of this that I want you to talk about is Bumpy's reflection off of what Mamie is telling him, and then we see the reflection of the paintings from the same painter, but it reflects to that other one that Bumpy tore up. What do you think about this revelation that it feels like for Bumpy in this moment?
Yeah, it's everything you said. They drew the connection about the painting and understanding the inevitable fate of who he is, and that the artist was able to see that. It's not what I do think is interesting is wow, you saw that, and maybe Bumpy was in denial. Mamie didn't, and I think now she understands, which it's interesting that she didn't get the vision. That I think that would have been more telling if she would have looked at it and would have saw the vision of everything. So
if she would have looked at Bumpy and then his face flipped to the painting back to him. But I think it was more important. I think the weird part with it is that Mamie always saw Bumpy that way. Because remember, she didn't mind the painting. In the end, like what the painter said made sense to her. It's the realization for Bumpy, like, dude, you are a devil and a saint.
Yep.
Like you gotta accept who you are.
Yeah.
And then the next scene with Bumpy is Godfather of Harlem again flexing their muscle. Because we literally talked about all these Oscar-winning actors. Completely forgot that Whoopi Goldberg, who is an EGOT Oscar-winning actress, is in this series in the smallest of bit parts seemingly possible here. But this is Bumpy meeting with his accountant as it seems to plot a way out of the drug business. What did you just think about their conversation with one another about Bumpy's businesses and about him possibly wanting to leave and just her concern for him?
Nothing that we don't already know. Sir, if you get out of this, to know your finances is going to take a hit. You didn't know? Okay, cool. She validates it. This was more about Whoopi Goldberg getting another scene for us to understand and to bring that sort of again to really equip this episode to be as strong as what it is. You had to bring Whoopi back to give her a moment. It's an unnecessary scene, but yeah, it's important to have Whoopi. It's more about Whoopi and her star power than it is about any bit of the context of what's happening with this episode. Because we all know that. So you want to get out, and you think your money's just going to be okay, okay.
But the weird part is because I got a little thrown off at first when he asked her about the plans moving forward, and she said it is set up for your grandchildren to be set for life. I didn't make the correlation at that point in time that
go ahead.
It was dependent on you keep on selling drugs. Like she clearly made it obvious at first that you have everything set up for 900 years that everyone would be fine. But if you stop selling drugs, this is going to be the problem of
it. Yeah.
And again, this is, I think, the most important aspect for this conversation for people that know history is that when Bumpy passed, Bumpy family wasn't all right. That should tell you exactly a lot about the situation that Bumpy, not the situation, but the decision Bumpy made. Because his family was not all right after he passed away.
Yeah. Or was he?
Who?
Or were they?
They weren't. That part is unless the show would love to change history, or that part is kind of known.
You know, and there's always this thing. I mean, I didn't know about this. So I'm just about to just clearly shoot in the dark. Or unless this is one of the things where he was good, he just hid the money. You know, there's a lot of infamous bosses.
Black folks hide money. You can say black folks.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Black folks hide money from everywhere.
Well, listen, when you think about these names, we don't got to name them. When you think about these names, they're like, oh, we still haven't found all of their money. It's like, it's houses, yards. You know, I honestly, there's a DC person won't bring it up, but I know a person that lived in one in a previous spot. And they was just like, oh, yeah. Somebody told me I need to check every wall in here. That ain't a joke. That's not a joke.
Not at all. Not at all. They were not joking with you because they hid it as much as humanly possible behind those walls. But, hey,
family and everybody living normal, regular DC lives, but there's still a lot of unaccounted for money. So I don't know if that's what they were trying to get at here by, and maybe that is the purpose of this scene. It could be either way, honestly, but maybe that is the purpose of saying like there should have been a lot of money and we can't find it, or there absolutely was a lot of money and we couldn't find it. Something's happening here, but you know, we'll see.
Or the third thing could be that Bumpy was aware of what can happen, and he still made a decision that he thought was best for his family.
Yeah.
Next up is again the importance of this education bill that Powell gets passed through the Senate, which puts everything in place. Again, it's a lot of talk about this bill. There's a lot of talk about getting money to Harlem. There's a lot of talk about getting Black people their rights. I think this is just to help point out that besides the things that Malcolm was doing to uplift Black folks, Powell has a horrible history. If you ever look up his name, none of it's good. And I think this show is doing a job of showing, like, while he may have done some things that were bad, some things that were crooked, he still went out his way to do things that help Black people. And I think this scene, along with other scenes, could possibly be pointing to that direction. Other than that, it's not much at all, anything at all to talk about.
Well, where's the Queen's Child Project, Dan?
Well, I mean, after James died, I don't think Stella St. Patrick was going to help Tariq build that. I mean, Stella said, James is dead, I'm going to Paris.
I miss the power folks and their theories at this point now. So it's about that time for folks to be thinking that Angela and Stella are related. That's the rumors I need.
Wow.
Two different nationalities, but they're related.
Hey, look here. It's almost like the same theory that we have that Alton is still alive, according to the Snowfall people. They just never get enough. Never get enough of anything. But next up is the big drop. And I'm going to focus on everything because first is the scene where Jose and Joe are wondering where's Wild Bill at while they're picking up this big shipment of drugs. But I just want to focus on the entire scene of the shipment of drugs, what happens with the shipment of drugs, the FBI, Chin, and Bumpy. What are your thoughts on this entire setup and how it plays out?
Yeah, this is clearly the big finale here, where you expect some craziness to go down. But the paranoia on Jose is telling.
Yes.
He's the one that's just really he's coming off as he's trying to be super trigger happy, as if he's never been in something like this before. So it was just kind of like, what's up with Jose? That's all I kept thinking about the whole time. What is up with Jose? Everything else was just, it's normal as possible. But we do see Jose and Joe together, which is the new agreement or partnership that they got. But yeah, everything else is just normal, until Chin and Bumpy show up. Be like, oh, what do they got going on? I'm surprised no one shot a fire at them, but Jose made it very clear he's a boss, can't do that. But Bumpy,
because Chin people were still there, they knew better.
Absolutely. They didn't. Matter of fact, if you actually look at the scene, the extras in this scene didn't even look their way. And I think that's also telling because it's not really their business, or they already knew. It's like, it's Chin.
Yeah, that's their boss.
For us to do here. Yeah,
because
not for us to do
Chin
here.
used his men to secure the drop. So they're like, oh, no boss there. We're not even looking at him. It was Jose just being so gung-ho because, again, he needs to desperately kill Fidel. And with Wild Bill not there, I'm thinking that they playing it like he was concerned, like, if he doesn't show up, that's my end. That's the only way I can do any of this is I need Wild Bill there. And when you get Chin and Bumpy show up together and Wild Bill is nowhere to be found, it kind of tells you, this ain't a good situation. And then next up, we have the FBI showing up. As they try, Bumpy and Chin play this perfectly of saying, we're trying to warn you before they get here. And they get there 2 minutes later. So I want to close this out with them because we clearly know what the end of this episode would be about. What do you think about after the FBI raids, after the FBI arrests everybody, the conversation that Bumpy and Chin have with Morgenthau in that car, and then the conversation between Bumpy and Chin at the end?
Yeah, it's like when a good plan comes into play, but they had their own plan outside of all of the different ultimatums and other plans and other pitches that they had. It was the two of them together as they stood on top of the building a couple of episodes ago. This was their end game here, seeing enemy of an enemy is my friend, and them playing nice with one another. So it was just a cool little touch on everything that was happening in this episode.
And what do you think about their conversation at the end? And what Bumpy tells Chin?
What part exactly? Not ringing the bell.
All the way at the end, their last one, when they're leaving it together, they're driving in the car, and Bumpy tells Chin, "I'm out. You can have Harlem." What are your thoughts that is the conclusion that Bumpy comes to?
I
And this
forgot
was
about that.
before Bumpy. This was before Bumpy finds out the news about Malcolm, that he makes this decision.
Oh, right. I mean, honestly, I didn't take it as much. Honestly, I mean, he's been so back and forth about his position and all of this. I really didn't take it as much, but I think that, I don't know. I think why this was a win for them. I think this was definitely just Bumpy just kind of bouncing around with all of his feelings. I think, looking at his wins, obviously, but his losses. And I think that the Malcolm was the exclamation point in terms of everything that he's either been involved with or distracted with. But the other thing that's important around him, he hasn't been able to support. And I even think that, there's obviously a level of regret in terms of what happened with Malcolm. But I think that, with his wife and losing the job and not being able to do anything at the beginning of the season was her getting a job. I think it's just, I think he's just starting to realize more and more, his reach and his effect is more than just dealing with things, narcotics and whatnot. So I think it's just maybe a simple route of self-reflection and regret.
I think it's more regret, it feels, than anything else. Him realizing that technically dealing with Wild Bill put Elise in that situation, it's caused Mamie to question everything about herself, and that technically blame herself partially for being with Bumpy. And Bumpy thinking maybe it's time for me to actually put my community above my own self-interest the way Malcolm sees me, instead of being the man that I think I'm supposed to be. I think that's a full reflection in this conversation with Chin before he finds out what happened with Malcolm. Speaking of Malcolm, because it's the last part of the episode here, we're just going to go full circle with everything here, from Malcolm arrives at the auditorium to give his speech, to the conversation him and Betty have about bringing the kids to there, to the conversation him and Elise have, the conversation him and Omar have. What'd you just think about this entire setup to Dale and Pettigrew being arrested so they wouldn't provide security for him at this ballroom? What do you just think about this whole setup as we get to what we always knew was the inevitable of Malcolm being murdered?
Yeah, this whole episode with the time stamps, with the ticking, almost the metronome noise that we heard the entire time, was obviously the inevitable end of Malcolm X. Obviously, if you know by the date, was it February 21st? Obviously by the location, the paranoia, these what do you call them? These shots where you kind of just by yourself. I can't think of the name of it, but these shots where they just kind of like isolating Malcolm, and we're just kind of like zoning out with him a little bit. We all knew what was going to happen. I think that, again, for something that either you done seen the reenactment of this, whether you done heard it, whether you done listened to it, the newscast, whatever it may be, because all this is archival footage, so it's available. It is declassified records. I still think they did a really good job into heighten and invoking the emotions of the viewers to really take us on this ride, this last day of everything in Malcolm X. And the moments of looking at his family, the exchange with Omar and the gun, something that he never really wanted, but he did it because he wanted to get Omar kind of out of his way. He already made peace that he was going to die. There was nothing that was going to change here. I just think that looking at the brutality of it was also a thing. He took multiple shots. He took a sawed off, and then he took, I don't know, probably additional.
They kept on shooting him until they made sure he was dead.
Yeah, Elise knew what was happening. She stood back in the back.
Man, that was a powerful shot there.
Yeah. And honestly, she's there because not only did she want to support Malcolm, but she wanted to hear Malcolm. She was in the back.
Yeah.
Which means that she knew what was going to happen, which, I know how like theaters are now, but it's not to say that back then, did they have intercoms in the back? I don't know. So was she back there?
Voice would have been so loud, she could have still heard him speak.
Possibly, but, or she could have just been okay with making peace, knowing that he was also going to die. Because remember, she didn't cry. She kind of just went out there and knew what it was,
I mean, everybody knew that day. From when we hear historians talk about it, when we hear people speak about it, they say it was always an eerie feeling when he got there that day that something bad was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, anything you go to any venue, they're not doing security. I think that anything. I no shade to
Yeah.
anybody and their feelings about that day, but I go to
And
any venue without security, literally think like, oh, well,
yeah, it's just the hardest thing to think about is Malcolm saying he didn't want people patted down.
Yeah, he knew it, and I think he was tired. I think he was tired. I think he just made it in a sense of peace of just saying that tired of running, I'm tired of hiding. And I think he understood that like this moment in time was always going to just everything he's worked for was not going to end that day.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was going to be amplified because of this. And yeah, it's just a whole powerful thing. Now, listen, Dale and Pettigrew, that right there is an interesting. They have never been pulled over.
Never. And when they asked, "Who are you?" and they named every organization, and they said a little bit of all, and left it at that. But the point, they knew exactly where they were going and who exactly they were going to protect. Like it's a
that ain't street intel.
Yeah, it's a beautiful setup that they did here, down to of them showing. I don't think this is a historical fact that Malcolm was armed at that moment, but the point that you see Malcolm could have shot them before they got a shot off, but understood if I shoot them, there's no telling where the rest of the bullets are going to go. And him looking at his family and like, okay, if this is going to be my fate, I prefer to be just mine and mine alone, because by the grace of God, no one else was harmed. It was just him.
Yeah, and it's so this character Omar is a person, I assume. And if not, it's obviously a composite.
I don't know if it's a composite of multiple people.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about that is this is also something that only some people would have known. It's like, well, how did he get the gun? Why did he have the gun? Why didn't he use the gun? I think the people that was close to it would only be the only ones that understood that. And it could have been a lot. There could have been theories. There could have been theories saying they planted the gun on him. Like, no, they didn't plant a gun on him. He had a gun.
But as Omar said, I got to take this gun because if I don't, all they're gonna say, it's a bunch of niggas shooting at each other. They're gonna look for a way to discredit him at all costs, because that was the goal. There is not only to kill him, but I need to kill his message.
Yeah,
like
it's sad.
Granted, they found a way to suppress it afterwards, but they could never kill it. They just suppressed it just enough by saying that he was killed by people in his own faith, religion, and people that were black.
Yeah,
like they understood what they were doing. They understood the goal was to suppress Malcolm's message as much as possible.
Yeah, it's definitely sad.
It's an amazing way they shot this scene. It's an emotional scene to see, especially like if you're coming off of anything of historical reference or the documentaries on Malcolm X, the Netflix doc about Malcolm X, where they literally show his body and what happened to his body there. Like, and just to see this exact scene play out like this in this show, it's heavy.
Yeah, and I also think the attention to detail. I mean, Malcolm in the photos that were released of him being brought out, the autopsy pictures, the pictures from the funerals. You know, he had his mouth a little bit open at the time, and he made sure that they had that while he was in the autopsy room, the coroner's room, and yeah, it's sad. And they just did a really good job of doing so. And I also think that Bumpy coming in and sharing his words, I think that I don't know who this story may have channeled through, obviously after Bumpy's death, but this is one of those family secrets where, like, Bumpy did go to see him like at the corner, and was obviously anybody was indie journalists and everybody said, well, what did he say? He went in there and he said he let him have it. He said, you selfish bastard, should let me take care of you.
But not only that, it's the key element that Bumpy was out. But when Malcolm died, Bumpy said, I'm stuck in. Like, I can't leave now.
Yeah.
Like, you were my guiding light. I think that's the point they really wanted to show here with this series, is that Malcolm was Bumpy's guiding light. He was Bumpy's conscience.
Yeah.
What do you do next season when you have a Bumpy that does not have a conscience?
Yeah.
What does that look like for everyone else involved?
Yeah.
He doesn't have that person he can go to and have deep conversations about why he shouldn't take certain actions. At this point, Bumpy's thinking is everybody should die. Everybody can get it because you killed my brother.
Yeah.
But, sir, what are your thoughts on the season finale of Godfather of Harlem, Black Shining Prince?
All right, man. It's again, just much like I said in the beginning, it's been a fantastic season. I'm looking forward to next and many more seasons. I am definitely curious to where they go next. And we have ideas where they can go next. It's going to be a matter of how much time is going to pass here.
I mean, we get technically we have 3 years left before Bumpy passes. I want to say Bumpy passes in 68. Unless Bumpy passed in 68.
Okay.
Bumpy and Martin died the same year.
That's right. That's what I always. Yep. That's right. Yeah. So, I think now is the moment of passing legacy, and it's gonna be interesting to see that. I think also too with Malcolm being a big part of the story gone, you have to insert another big character. And I don't know if Bumpy had history with Malcolm. I mean, with Martin.
He didn't. Nah, he didn't have history with Martin, but it's another big character that, I mean, with history, it's been talks about if they actually met this way, but the big character to set up would actually be Frank Lucas.
That's all. I mean, obviously, and listen, it'll be interesting to see who they cast. What does that look like? When does Bumpy start to take a seat back? What does Dale and Pettigrew and Frank? Is that a thing? Because Frank comes in and he becomes the right hand man. So where did he come from?
You would get the introduction of him. You would get the introduction of Nikki Barnes at this time. Also, I want to say,
yeah.
Is Guy Fisher around this time too?
I don't know.
No. Guy Fisher's around the time after Bumpy. Nikki is around that time too. He would have came up into power after Bumpy. But Frank is the key part. That's the correlation most people make to Bumpy nowadays is Frank Lucas.
Yeah.
Again, it's just interesting to see where we get with this amazing cast. Where is this going to lead Chin and the families? We understand that Joe's in jail. You think Joe's not going to bring up the point that Chin showed up at the drop with Bumpy?
Yeah.
Does Chin care? Because again, Chin has the soldiers. He could take over everything if he chose to.
Yeah.
I mean, at what point will Stella take over and run home? These are questions that we need to have answered here by the season 4 of Godfather of Harlem. But we would like to thank you all for tuning in for this entire season of Godfather of Harlem. You go back, check out our reviews 1 through 10. Let us know about your full thoughts on the series and if this is something that you picked up on this season like we did, or maybe it's something that you picked up on the other 2 seasons and you just really felt it was about time that we finally recorded it because we've been hearing this for a couple of years for some of you all out there about us covering Godfather of Harlem. But also check out everything else we got going on here. We currently still got Snowfall. We currently still got Power going on. Go back, watch everything else. We got Bel Air also. The Mandalorian, if you all are into sci-fi, just check it out. Big Old Belt. Lots of entertainment for you all. Peace, people.
See y'all.